Hiya folks, well the World Cup is done and we're back onto it now, so welcome to DJ Living's Fantasy Premier League. Right folks, I did plan to do a bit of maybe one or two during the World Cup, but with moving and everything else I didn't get a chance to do it. So we're back into the swing of it now, the FPL starting on Boxing Day this year. So let's look at the league, where the league finished in that first half of the season. So Gary Britton on 902 points is in lead at the moment, with myself on 898, Adam Anderson 897 and George Vasilakis on 893. If you look at the top 7, there's 15 points between the top 7. And then even 8th is only 18 points behind that. So it's still all to play for in the second half. And what I'm going to do as well, I'm going to take a note of everyone's scores, and then we're going to look at the end of the season, we're going to look at the first half lead, the first half winners and the second half winners. So if you've not joined already, please feel free to join the league before this Boxing Day or even after that, and you can still possibly get a chance of getting a mention at the end of the season with that second half of the season win. So that's how the league's panning out at the moment. Right folks, another thing I will say is that the backdrop's not great. At the moment I'm just in the corner of the room. Things are still all over the place a bit with moving in and that, so there will be a more of a dedicated space for doing this vlog and other vlogs as well. But for now, this is what you've got. So let's now take a look back at the last round before the break and have a look at the results. So that last game, obviously the biggest shock in that round was that Man City got beaten at home to Brentford 2-1. Bournemouth 3-0 over Everton, Liverpool 3-1 over Southampton, Forest 1-0, good win for Forest against Palace. Spurs managed a 4-3 win. That wasn't a great performance, but there was a couple of games in a row there towards the end of that first half where Spurs were losing and managed to pull out 3 points. West Ham lost at home to Leicester 2-0. Newcastle 1-0 win at Chelsea. Newcastle are really showing their mettle now, and they're pushing for that top 4 position at the end of the season. Wolves 0, Arsenal 2, Brighton 1, Villa 2, bit of a shock there maybe, and then Fulham 1, Manchester United 2, for a total of 29 goals and 5 clean sheets. The 4 players I had to watch that week. The goalkeeper and defender, I looked at Ramsdale and Gabriel from Arsenal. Obviously both got a clean sheet. Ramsdale 6 points, Gabriel 5 points. My midfielder was the one that let me down a little bit more. Brighton, I had Pascal Gross from Brighton, only got 1 point for me. And then up front I had Solanke at Bournemouth, who got 5 points in their 3-0 win. The top players in that first half of the season, obviously, you know, it's an easy call for top man. Haaland 123 points in that first half of the season. Harry Kane, the only other man to be over the 100 threshold with 102. Trippier and Almiron, 2 Newcastle players, 96 and 93. De Bruyne 90, and Tony managed 83 points. The one thing that's happened in this little mini break in the season, obviously you've got a few injuries to deal with. Jesus is injured and will be expected to be out for at least another month or 2. Richarlison is expected to be out for about 6 to 8 weeks as well for Tottenham, after he had started to play well, and he played well for Brazil in the World Cup as well. And then even Tony, there's no actual punishment as yet, but obviously he's been found guilty of these alleged betting offences, and it's looking like he will get a lengthy suspension. He's got until, I think it's the 3rd or 6th of January to appeal, so until that point he'll be playing still. But I expect after that, you're lucky if he's got to play another game in the season. They might get a few more weeks left out of even Tony, which is a shame. There are obviously other injuries as well that I've not mentioned to lesser players. Performances in the World Cup as well. Great performances from a lot of Premier League players. And there's a lot of Premier League players that are in that final. Argentina and on the French side as well. And looking at the second half of the season, will they be playing on Boxing Day realistically? I mean, McAllister is one of the biggest names really for Brighton, and Brighton need them players to be playing. but with such a campaign getting to the final and having a slog at the final as well, is he going to be rested for at least the first game or two? So the questions need to be answered, and it depends on what you want to do. Whether you risk putting him in your team and hope your bench is good enough to, if he doesn't play, or you take him out for this 1 week, or you transfer him completely and see what happens. But there's going to be a few players in this first game, especially, that I think could be rested, who got far into the final. Then obviously there's a few players that went out quite early. A lot of our players didn't go at all, like Haaland in particular. They've been playing friendlies. A lot of the club sides have been playing friendlies as well, so they're not really they're not rested as such, but it's not hard work either. So it's they're still keeping their momentum going into the second half of the season. So it's going to be an interesting start season, and then obviously just as the season, get that first game or two under your belt, and then the transfer window opens, and there's rumours galore going about who's going to be going where. Players coming in from abroad, players going from lower teams to better to higher teams, and there's a lot going on. So rumours only at the moment, and nothing confirmed. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting first 6 weeks or so into the second half of this season. But let's look now at that team of the week for that last week. So starting off in goal with Ward, who is his second team of the week in a row with 11 points. Then defence, you look at Robertson for Liverpool, Ben White for Arsenal, Smith from Bournemouth with 8 points. Robertson got 9 points, by the way. White and Smith both got 8 points. And Wilfred Bolly as well from Nottingham Forest also got 8 points. The midfield trio, Odegaard from Arsenal with 16 points. And then Tavernier from Bournemouth and Bentancur from Tottenham, both with 14 points. And up front, we had Danny Ings finishing that first half season off well, 13 points. Tony, 13 points. And Darwin Núñez also with 13 points for Liverpool. So some really big high scores in that last week of the season. And so let's see what happens in this upcoming week and see if any of those players can perform well as well. Also looking back on that first half of the season as far as the team of the weeks are concerned, just a quick rundown on who's the best players in each position. So you're looking at the goalkeepers. Remember, I've only got 15 weeks because I did miss 1 week of the scores, but you've got 3 goalkeepers: Sarr, Henderson, Forest and Ward. Both have had man of the match team of the week twice. As far as defence is concerned, Cancelo and Dalot from Man City and Man United respectively have had it 4 times each, with Saliba and Trippier on 3 times each. Looking at the midfield, there's a few players had it twice, but no one's had it more than twice so far. Midfield, you look at Salah for Liverpool, Rodrigo from Leeds, De Bruyne, Odegaard, Martinelli from Arsenal, McAllister, Trossard, Bentancur, and I think that's it. Oh, and Tavernier finished them last 2 weeks. He was another one that the last 2 weeks of the season managed team of the week in both performances. Up front, your 2 main men, Haaland, in 5 times he's been team of the week, as has even Tony 5 times, followed up by Harry Kane with 4. So they're the more consistent kind of players that you might want to put in your team long term. Right, now let's look on to the Boxing Day fixtures. These are the Boxing Day and the 2 days afterwards. So we start off with the first game that's got to kick off this second half is Brentford Spurs. Spurs, obviously, like I say, they had a couple of not great performances, but good results in the end, towards the end of that first half. Brentford, what's going to happen with even Tony? Will he be playing on his mind? Will he be pushing to get a few more goals before what could possibly happen to him suspension-wise? Palace Fulham, this could be the dull one, or I'm predicting this is going to be the dull game of them all. Everton Wolves next, both teams fighting for mid-table positions. Leicester against Newcastle. Leicester need the points, but Newcastle, like I say, they're pushing for that top 4, and they look like they're probably going to do it at this point. Southampton Brighton is next up, then Aston Villa Liverpool. Liverpool need some points desperately. Arsenal West Ham. Can Arsenal continue with Jesus? Are they going to look into bringing in someone else quite quickly into the transfer window? or are they going to try and look at Eddie Nketiah again this year? Chelsea, Bournemouth next up, then Man United, Forest, and finishing off with Leeds against Man City. When we see Haaland again in this second half and see if he can kick off the second half like he did the first half. My players to watch in this first game, obviously, like I said, always said, it's not about the best players necessarily, but it's the best value for money players. So Pickford had a good World Cup for England, really performed well, and he's had a reasonably good season. I've not always been a fan of Pickford as a club goalkeeper, but he's had quite a good season for Everton, so he's going to be kicking off. He's at home to Wolves, and Wolves have not scored well in his first half. I think they're still the lowest scorers. So I think Pickford is a good shout, 4.5 million. Defence, I've got Anderson, 4.5 million for Crystal Palace. They're home to Fulham, and Fulham have not done that great. Mitrovic, who was one of my early season tips to do well this year, he's not really shone as I thought he was going to. So I think there's a potential clean sheet, and Anderson's been scoring quite regularly for Crystal Palace, not massively, but scoring regularly. Midfield, Almiron for Newcastle. He's got a lot of points recently, especially that second half. So especially that second quarter of the season so far. And he's only 5.8 million as well. So he's still a bargain in midfield for Newcastle. And then up front, another Newcastle, Wilson. They're away to Leicester. And like I say, Leicester still fighting against relegation a little bit. And Newcastle really pushing. So I think Wilson and Almiron. Wilson is 7.4 million, not cheap for a striker, but not really that expensive either. So they're the 4 players to watch for this first game of the second half. Right, that's it for this first video back. I hope you enjoy it. Like I say, there's always time to join the league. Take care, guys. Give us a subscribe if you haven't already as well. Thumbs up, comment below if you want to ask any questions about this league or joining the league, or any players you want to ask questions about players. I'll give you my honest opinion. So if you want to comment below, just please do. And we'll see you next week for another edition of Fantasy Premier League. Take care, guys.